So I'm going to hand over to James. James, can you unmute yourself and come on in and present on your import controls processes and the product journeys, please? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can we just skip on to the next slide first, please? Actually, my name is James Sharples, as Louis said. I'm part of the EU member state engagement team in the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, otherwise known as DEFRA. I'm also joined by policy experts from DEFRA and HMRC who will be available to answer any questions that you have after the presentation. And of course, we'll take any away that we can't answer today and come back to you. Before I start, thank you to the Department of Agriculture for co-hosting and managing much of the organisation for today's webinar. It's been incredibly well run so far, and thank you for the presentations that we've seen so far. I'm going to run through the changes to the sanitary and phytosanitary regime from the 1st of January for goods moving from the EU to Great Britain. I'll also touch on wood packaging material as that came up in the questions, and it comes up frequently in the events that we've done across Europe over the past couple of months. After that, I'll go into some product journeys to show how some of this will work in practice. And you'll receive a copy of the slide pack afterwards, which I hope will address any questions you have. But as I said, we've got colleagues on the line who will be happy to take questions. Next slide, please. So new sanitary and phytosanitary controls will apply to goods exported into Great Britain from the EU from the 1st of January 2021. These have been introduced in 3 main stages between January and July 2021, with different controls being introduced at each stage for different commodities. All changes will be announced in advance, and information is available on the UK government's website, which I will refer to throughout this presentation as gov.uk. I'd suggest that you follow gov.uk closely, as well as announcing changes and details of the rules. It will also have links to access the documents that you'll need. So the controls being introduced will include import pre-notification, health certification, documentary ID and physical checks, and then from next July, entry through a point of entry with a border control post with relevant checking facilities. Next slide, please. On plants and plant products imports into GB, from the 1st of January, there will be a requirement for pre-notification and phytosanitary certificates for high priority plants and plant products. A list of what constitutes a high priority plant or plant product is available on the gov.uk website. A link will be in the presentation that you'll get. So I won't go into the full detail of what is and what isn't on there. But as an example, the list details all plants for planting, ware potatoes and some seed potatoes, some timber, and used agricultural and forestry machinery. From next April, the requirement for pre-notification and phytosanitary certificates is extended to all regulated plants and plant products. We've published a full list of commodities that are not regulated on the gov.uk website. If the commodity is not mentioned on that list, it will need certificates. And then from next July, there will be an increased number of physical and identity checks at border control posts. Next slide, please. So these next couple of slides should go back to the January one. Thanks. These next couple of slides just go through in a bit more detail the requirements for plants and plant products. In summary, from 1st of January, pre-notification of phytosanitary certificates will be required for high priority plants and plant products with checks carried out remotely. Physical checks will be carried out on high priority plants which are not subject to systematic import checks now, but constitute high risk pathways. These will take place to destination or other approved premises. EU exporters will need to apply for a phytosanitary certificate from the relevant competent authority of the country of origin. You will need this before the goods departure so that it can be sent to the importer for pre-notification purposes. Importers will need to submit import notifications at least 4 hours prior to arrival if travelling by air, or at least 1 working day prior to arrival by all other modes of transport, along with the phytosanitary certificate. Next slide, please. And then from the 1st of July, the 1st of April, all regulated plants and plant products will require pre-notification and to be accompanied by a phytosanitary certificate. And then from July, physical checks for plants and plant products will increase. Those subject to phytosanitary controls will need to enter via a point of entry with an appropriate border control post that has the relevant checking facilities. All ID and physical checks for plants and their products will move to border control posts, either at existing points of entry or at new inland sites. Next slide, please. Moving on to animals, and again, the changes are phased between January and July. From the 1st of January, pre-notification and health certificates will be required for all live animals. These must be submitted at least one working day before arrival at the point of entry. Any product of animal origin subject to safeguard measures will need to be pre-notified and accompanied by the relevant health certificate. For live animals with safeguard and products of animal origin with safeguard measures, the GB importer will need to provide will provide a unique notification number, or UNN, that is generated when they raise the pre-notification. This number must be entered onto the health certificate. As the exporter, you will be responsible for ensuring the relevant health certificate travels with the consignment. Animal byproducts will continue with the requirement to be accompanied by official commercial documentation. High-risk animal byproducts will require the importer to pre-authorize, and high-risk animal byproducts in Category 3 processed animal protein will require pre-notification in advance. More information on what constitutes high-risk animal byproduct can be found in the border operating model. And again, a link will be provided in the presentation. From the 1st of April, all products of animal origin will require pre-notification by IPAFFS, which is the Import of Products, Animals, Food and Feed system. This is the system which GB importers must use to pre-notify SPS imports, and I'll speak more about that in a moment. The GB importer must make the notification to IPAFFS. As the exporter, again, you will be required to obtain the relevant health certification and ensure that it travels with the consignment. The process is introduced on the 1st of January for live animals, high-risk animal byproducts and products of animal origin subject to safeguard measures will continue right through until July. Next slide, please. And then from the 1st of July, all live animals and products of animal origin will require pre-notification using IPAFFS and must be accompanied by an export health certificate. They will be required to enter via an established point of entry with an appropriate border control post with relevant checking facilities. Animal byproducts must be accompanied by an export health certificate or other official documentation. Certain animal byproducts will need to arrive at an established point of entry with an appropriate border control post, and certain animal byproducts will require pre-notification. Again, as the EU exporter, you need to ensure that the correct documentation travels with the consignments. And at this stage in July, identity and physical checks for products of animal origin and animal byproducts will also be introduced. All ID and physical checks for animal products will move to border control posts, either at existing points of entry or at new inland sites. Products of animal origin, germinal products and animal byproducts imported from the EU will be subject to a minimum level of 1% physical checks, but all high-risk live animals will continue to be checked as they currently are. Some products such as shellfish and certain animal byproducts will be subject to higher minimum check levels. These measures will be reviewed over the course of the year, and any further changes will be introduced after January 2022. Next slide, please. Onto fisheries. Existing import rules will apply for imports of fishery products and live bivalve molluscs for human consumption until April 2021. However, catch certificates and other illegal and reported unregulated IUU documentation will be subject to checks from January 2021. From April, fishery products and live bivalve molluscs for human consumption will be subject to import controls in line with those applied to animal products. From April, there will also be a requirement for importers to submit pre-notifications for fishery products through IPAFFS in advance of goods arrival, in the same way as products of animal origin. EU flag vessels will not be able to continue landing live bivalve molluscs as direct landings into GB. These will need to be imported under the appropriate health certification. From July 2021, fishery products will be subject to import controls, including an export health certificate, import pre-notifications, and entry via an established point of entry with an appropriate border control post. Different rules apply for direct landings. Most imports of marine caught fish and some shellfish will need a validated catch certificate to be sent to the importing competent authority prior to the goods arrival. Live aquatic animals for aquaculture and ornamental purposes will also be subject to import controls applying to live animals. Next slide, please. So I said I would come back to the IT system. So the new system for GB importers to pre-notify SPS imports is IPAFFS, the Imported Products, Animals, Food and Feed System. IPAFFS is already live and is being used for some commodities alongside traces. From 2021, IPAFFS will be used to pre-notify UK officials and other official bodies before goods subject to SPS controls enter Great Britain from the EU in the phased approach that, I've outlined. Next slide, please. So, put simply, IPAFFS will replace traces for Great Britain importers, and there'll be a phased migration. As you can see from the table on this slide, IPAFFS is already in place for live animals, animal byproducts, and germinal products for EU and EEA countries. Products of animal origin, high-risk food and feed not of animal origin will start from the 1st of April. Plants and plant products will likely be introduced from the 1st of February, but we do need to confirm that date. You should also be aware that IPAFFS will go live for non-EU and non-EEA countries at different dates. And as I've said previously, updates will on this and everything that I've spoken about so far will be on gov.uk when that information becomes available. Next slide, please. So finally, in this section, I said a touch on wood packaging material. I did think it would come up in the questions. So after the end of the transition period, all wood packaging material moving from GB to the EU and from the EU to GB must be treated and appropriately marked in compliance with ISPM 15 international standards by undergoing heat treatment and marking. So there's a link on this slide that outlines the requirements for that standard. So this is in line with international requirements for trade and is in place to protect the environment from pests and diseases. By definition, when we are talking about wood packaging material, we are including pallets, crates, boxes, cable drums, spools, and dunnage. It is worth mentioning that the wood packaging material industry has been working to increase the UK stock of compliant wood packaging material and to increase the UK wood packaging material treatment capacity by increasing the number of heat treatment facilities and the hours of operation, and by simplifying and improving ISPM 15 processes. As there will be no immediate change to the biosecurity threat of wood packaging material originating from the EU at the end of the transition period, the UK will maintain its current risk-based checking regime for EU wood packaging material. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so that takes you to the end of the SPS, change to the SPS regime. I'm now going to take you through the product journeys to show how goods will move from Ireland into Great Britain after the end of the transition period. We're not going to go through them all in great detail, but we will cover the first one, dairy, in broad terms, and then look at how that compares to the product journeys for meat, composite products, plants, fish, and live equines. We will share the detail behind these slides for you to consider after the event today, because there is a lot of information that it's just not practical to impart in this kind of forum. Worth reiterating now, as mentioned in the previous presentation, sanitary and phytosanitary controls will apply to goods imported from GB to the EU from the 1st of January, and the controls will be introduced in stages up until the 1st of July, with different controls introduced at each stage for different commodities. So moving on to the first one, which is, so we'll look at dairy. From January 21st, products of animal origin subject to safeguard measures, there will be new requirements for pre-notification, and all goods must be accompanied by a GB health certificate. For products of animal origin subject to safeguard measures, the UK importer should supply the EU exporter or the official vet with the unique notification number, the UNN, that is produced when the importer notifies the UK's Animal Plant Health Agency about the import. The exporter must add the UNN to the health certificate. From April 2021, all products of animal origin will be required to pre-notify using IPAFFS, and all goods must be accompanied by a GB health certificate and will undergo remote documentary checks. From July 2021, all animals and animal products must also arrive at an established point of entry with an appropriate border control post, and products of animal origin, as I mentioned earlier, will be subject to a minimum level of 1% checks. The level of physical and identity checks from July on animals and animal products will be proportionate and based on assessments of biosecurity and public health risks. Next slide, please. Okay, looking at the customs and the certification requirements, still with dairy, you must submit an export declaration on your country's declaration system and submit a transit declaration on the transit IT system, or NCTS, to start the transit movement. You must also have a UK and EU EORI number from the relevant authorities. They will provide the haulier with their EU EORI number and a unique reference number from the transit system to enable them to move the goods across the border and into the UK. They'll also have secured the movement by putting a guarantee, a CCG, in place. DEFRA requires a GB health certificate to be submitted, and any GB health certificate will need to travel with the consignment and an electronic copy provided to the UK importer for uploading to IPAFFS. The pre-notification has to be submitted on IPAFFS before goods arrive at the border. Next slide, please. So when goods, dairy products and other products of animal origin can continue to enter at any point of entry and do not need to enter via point of entry with an appropriate border control post until July 2021. From January 2021, consignments of products of animal origin under safeguard measures from the consignments from the EU of products of animal origin under safeguard measures. So documentary, sorry, apologies, my notes are slightly out of order here. So for consignments of products of animal origin under safeguard measures, documentary checks will occur remotely, and identity and physical checks on products of animal origin under safeguard measures will be undertaken at the point of destination on a risk-led basis until July 2021. A documentary check entails an examination of the official documents which are required to accompany the consignment. Identity checks include a visual inspection to verify the content of the consignment corresponds to the official documents. A physical check means a check on the condition of the commodity and may include sampling for analysis. But all other products of animal origin, not under safeguard measures, there will be remote documentary checks from April 2021. From July 2021, all animals and animal products must also arrive at an established point of entry with an appropriate border control post. Products of animal origin will be subject to a minimum of 1% checks. And then, as mentioned earlier, the level of physical and identity checks from July 2021 will be proportionate and based on assessments of biosecurity and public health risk. Next slide, please. So next we will look at meat. This is almost the same as before. However, if you are importing a high-risk animal byproduct not for human consumption, it will need pre-authorization before it can be imported. Consignments of high-risk animal byproducts and products of animal origin under safeguard measures from the EU can continue to enter at any point of entry and do not need to enter via a point of entry with an appropriate border control post until July 2021. Next slide, please. Composite products are the foods containing both processed products of animal origin and products of plant origin. The scope of products of animal origin, including composite products and the staged import requirements of products of animal origin, will also apply to composite products unless otherwise exempt. I won't go into exemptions now. Further information on composite products and exemptions can be found on the Food Standards Agency website, which will be linked on the presentation. Next slide, please. The product journey for fish is again very similar to those of dairy, meat and composite products. Imports of fishery products for human consumption will be subject to the same controls as products of animal origin from April 2021. The main difference here is that from January 2021, most imports of marine core fish and some shellfish will need to be accompanied by a catch certificate and other relevant IUU fishing documentary requirements. Checks on these documents will take place from January 2021. The importer will need to supply a catch certificate as well as an IUU documentation to the competent authority for all imports of fish and fish products not exempt from the UK's IUU regulation in advance of import, and there are various timescales dependent on product and transit. Catch certificates can be checked remotely as the fish does not need to enter via BCP until July 2021. Next slide, please. Okay, we'll look at plants and plant products now. Again, similar processes to other products. But exporters will need to apply for a phytosanitary certificate from the relevant competent authority. It will need to be secured prior to the goods departure so that it can be sent to the importer for pre-notification purposes. The phased import regime for plants and plant products from the EU is as follows, and this really is a repetition of what I said earlier. From 1st of January, all high priority plants and plant products must have a phytosanitary certificate and pre-notification. These will be subject to physical and identity checks that will occur at place of destination. From April 2021, all regulated plants and plant products must have a phytosanitary certificate and pre-notification. So that's moving from high priority to all. Physical checks will still only be required on EU high priority goods at place of destination. And then from July, the number of physical and identity checks on regulated plant products will increase, and these checks will move to border control posts. Documentary checks will be carried out remotely. A scanned copy should be provided with any pre-notification of import to the GB competent authority through Peach or the new Plant Health IT service. Within 3 days of a consignment reaching the UK, the original phytosanitary certificate must be provided to the Plant Health Authority. Importers will need to submit import notifications at least 4 hours prior to arrival if travelling by air or RoRo, or at least 1 working day prior to arrival by all other modes of transport, along with the phytosanitary certificate. Consignments will have to be exported before the end of the validity period of the phytosanitary certificate. Goods may be accompanied by a phytosanitary certificate, invoice, and commercial documents when relevant. So it's from January onwards for high priority products and April onwards for all other regulated plants and plant products. The IT systems used to facilitate the pre-notification of the import of plants and plant products for plant health purposes will be changing. This is will be moving from the current Peach system to a new service. From the 1st of January, it will be Peach. In early 2021, it will be the new Plant Health IT service. The exact date is to be confirmed, And businesses should continue to use the existing peach system until you're directed to register and use the new IT service. And just a note on CITES, after January the 1st, the UK will continue to comply with the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. All species of animals and plants listed under CITES will require CITES permits and import notification. Only certain UK land, sea and airports can be used as points of entry for moving CITES listed plants, and a list of CITES designated points of entry can be found on the gov.uk website. Next slide, please. The product journey for live equines is quite different from the previous commodities that have been outlined. Live equines will require pre-notification on IPAFFS from the 1st of January, not the 1st of April. This is the importer's duty. The exporter's duties are to obtain the appropriate health certification from the competent authority in the country of origin. For unregistered equines, this will involve pre-export blood testing, residency and isolation, which will need to be confirmed by the official vet before they sign off the health certificate. However, it will not be necessary for registered equines to meet these pre-export requirements. Original export health certificates and an equine passport need to accompany consignments. Between January and July, documentary checks will be carried out remotely. Equines can enter GB through any point of entry. Physical and identity checks may also be undertaken on a risk basis at the point of final destination. From July, all equines will need to enter Great Britain through an established point of entry with a border control post. Documentary checks will continue to be carried out remotely. Risk-based physical and identity checks will be carried out at the border control post. EU-issued transporter authorisations, certificates of competence, vehicle approval certificates and journey logs will no longer be valid for use in GB from 1st of January 2021. EU transporters wishing to transport equines into Great Britain from the 1st of January will need to make applications to the relevant delegated bodies for certificates of competence and vehicle approval certificates and to the Animal and Plant Health Agency for a transporter authorisation. To apply for a transporter authorisation, EU transporters must be represented in Great Britain. Where applicable, they'll need to apply for an EU-issued journey log from the EU member state of origin, in addition to a journey log issued by the Animal and Plant Health Agency for travel in Great Britain. Further information on that, again, is available on gov.uk. I think that might be the last slide. Can we just try and move on and see if, yeah, so that is the last slide in my presentation. I'm very aware that we presented a lot of information here. As I said, the slides will be shared and we'll also be able to provide detail behind some of the product journeys. There might also be areas that I haven't mentioned where you might have an interest. We haven't included the contacts in this presentation, but we will circulate afterwards with the slides. So thank you for your attention. We now have policy experts available to answer any questions that you have. So let me hand you back to Louise to lead the Q&A.
So I'm going to hand that back to your policy experts fairly quickly. There's a lot of questions coming in. There's a good few questions around horses. So maybe if your policy expert on horses can just maybe deal with those questions. They know what the questions are. In particular, goods, horses that are transiting the land bridge. So maybe if your policy expert on horses can come in and answer the questions, they see them there, I take it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that we have been answering some of the questions in the chat as well. So we'll direct people to that to just, and I'm sure that will be circulated afterwards as well. But Simon Waterfield should be on the line and able to take that.
I am James. Good morning, and good morning, everyone. I'm afraid I'm not getting all of the Q&A. My colleagues are passing them on to me where appropriate, but I think, can you shout out any that aren't covered by the Q&A? Otherwise, I can just go through the answers that I've provided on the chat.
So, Catherine, on
so
our side, do you want to just pull? Sorry, go ahead. I beg your pardon.
That's all right. No, my fault. What I was going to say on the transit side of things, we have another colleague who's responsible for transit issues more generally, and probably is safer in terms of what they say on that. But the position on transits is that there won't be any checks on arrival in GB or on departure in GB for equines or indeed any other live animals that are transiting GB. We will need to have confirmation that the animals have left GB, but otherwise we're still discussing precisely what documentation is appropriate, but we're not envisaging having any substantive checks for the animals as they transit through GB on the assumption that they will have been checked at or the arrangements will have been provided by the official vet, the clarification and the underpinning certification before they enter GB. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon, as well. Just to say, it's Bex here from DEFRA, and so I lead on the transit side of things. Just say that obviously everything Simon has said is correct. And if there is more detail you want me to go in on the transit side, but just to confirm, yeah, that for live animals, so including equines, it's that pre-notification that's required. They can enter and exit at any GB port, and they will need a health certificate with remote documentary checks undertaken, but there are no physical ID checks required on enter or exit, so there'll be no stopping at the ports. And of course, obviously, any live animal in transit will need to follow the welfare and transport regulations as well, and maximum permitted journey times, etc.
I'm sorry, I may have interrupted at a really crucial point, so I think I'm going to ask the question myself. So just to clarify then, at the moment, horses that are, and we will come to it in Ruth's presentation, where you have an inter-trade cert for animals transiting the land bridge. Is it the case that there is no additional health certification requirements from a UK perspective for those horses transiting the land bridge from the 1st of January?
So if I can just pick up on the sort of general live animal point, and I'll defer to Simon on anything specific that might be required for equine separately. But in terms of that, what that certification is that we will accept, that is being clarified this week. So I'll be able to share that update with you, hopefully later today or tomorrow. I'm just waiting upon final clearance for that, so we can confirm whether the ITAC can be accepted for DOCOMs for horses, isn't it? So I will be able to confirm that with you, I'd say later today or tomorrow. And Simon, I'll defer to you on anything specific for equines that isn't for the rest of live animals.
Thanks, Bex. Just to add to that, so I mean, it's the same issue for equine. So we are considering the role of ITACs and DOCOMs, and we'll clarify definitively what documentation will be appropriate. But the assumption, I think, underpinning this is that the documentation generated within the Republic of Ireland will be sufficient, and there shouldn't need to be any additional documentation generated within GB. I hope that's okay, Bex.
Yes, Simon, I would very much agree with that.
Then...
Sorry, Louise.
No, that's okay. So maybe we'll get clarification on that. There's a question around the rest. So obviously horses transiting the land bridge, and stopping for rest breaks. Can you talk to us about the arrangements that are in place for those horses that are transiting the land bridge? Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So I'm afraid I can't answer that question at the moment. Obviously, there will be the potential for animals to be rested and fed and watered, but that's part of a bigger discussion about movements of animals more generally. And I think probably the safest bet is for us to come back to you on that in the same way that we'll come back to you on the certification as soon as we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a number of questions around the authorizations or the requirements for people who are moving these live animals. So is there somebody, James, on your team that be able to cover off some of those questions and how basically transporters from Ireland will be able to continue to move animals over the land bridge from the start of next year?
Yes, of course. I have to say I'm not seeing some of these questions. I'm not sure if I'm missing something here, but I believe colleagues have been getting them elsewhere. Jack, are you available to take any of the questions that have been coming through on live animals?
Yeah, Jack here. Yes, I can. I have, as you say, been provided some, so they may already be covered. But if there's any that aren't, I'm happy to pick up what I can.
For not everybody can see. I think. Well, I'm not sure if everybody is seeing all of the questions and answers. So would you mind just giving us a brief overview, please, of those the requirements for people who are transporting animals across the land bridge, please, just so that everybody can hear. Thank you.
Apologies, Louise. Was that just did you ask for a repeat of the requirements on the land bridge?
Like in terms of the transporter authorization specifically. So if somebody can answer on the detail on that, please. Thank you.
Someone from, I guess that's kind of a welfare/HMRC question.
Yeah, sorry, I don't think that's something that I can cover with transporter authorization. I can think we might, if there's no one else on the line, we may have to take that one away.
Yeah, so it's slightly outside my remit, but I do know for transits that in terms of the sort of authorization log, the journey log that will be required, there will be a need to have a GB journey log for land bridge movements of live animals. But I think that sort of sits with the welfare team, so we can take that away and come back with a full answer to that question. And then I don't know about the HMRC elements that somebody might be able to pick up.
Oh, okay, so sorry, was somebody going to come in from HMRC? I beg your pardon.
Hi Louise, it's Kirsty. Flavia is from HMRC is on the line, but she had to dial in and I think she's having problems unmuting herself. But she said this question is a transport question and not for, and she can't answer it, unfortunately. But we can take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Kirsty. So, James, just I think a few people, including me, got very nervous when you said you were looking for export health certs for dairy from the 1st of January. So can we just confirm that you do not require export health certs for dairy products from the 1st of January? It's the 1st of April.
I will defer to Jack Tilbury if I can there. I think I may have misspoke.
Yeah, that's fine, James. Yeah, so if we're talking about importing dairy from the EU into Great Britain, then that's right. It's the 1st of April that you need a health certificate for products of animal origin. It's possible the confusion may have been caused. There will be requirements for health certificates for any products of animal origin that are under safeguard measures, so specific disease control measures. they may be required from the 1st of January, depending on the safeguard measure that's in place. But that shouldn't be an issue for any dairy that's been imported into Britain.
Okay, and in terms of the submission of that health certification, there was a question, I just can't see it now, but that DEFRA have confirmed that that can be submitted electronically. Is that the case? I'm just trying to pick up that question. So maybe just in terms of the submission of that, or does it need to be presented in a hard copy?
So yeah, I can pick that one up as well. So for health certificates for importing into Great Britain, you'll need to ensure that a physical copy of the certificate travels with the consignment, but you will need to provide an electronic copy to the GB importer, which they will then use to upload into IPAFFS, which will allow documentary checks to be carried out remotely. So it's both. You need to provide electronic copy to the importer, but you'll also need to ensure that the physical copy travels with the consignment.
Thank you very much. There are. I'm going to ask colleagues on my team to come in and maybe pull some questions in case I've missed them. So I understand there's been there are a few questions just have been handed in relation to phytosanitary requirements. So if any colleagues on my team want to jump in, or on agriculture team, please do that, and I'll try and pull out some more of these questions. There are so many of them. There's one or two questions about the bedding that goes with horses, and whether that is a wood product and subject to ISPM 15 requirements. There's a question around hay and straw and whether or not that is subject to import controls. Maybe Noreen, do you want to pick up on that on our side, and maybe James, if there's anybody on your side, then can deal with that.
So it's Jason from the plant health policy team within DEFRA. I can sort of pick up the wood shavings questions from an ISPM 15 side in the meantime. So yeah, just to confirm that, like you say, wood shavings are exempt from ISPM 15 requirements, so you obviously don't need to have those treated. One thing I would suggest though is, however, please do contact the Forestry Commission just to double check to make sure there are any requirements around sort of the wood shavings themselves as well. From a phytosanitary perspective as well, we wouldn't require a PC for sort of hay or bedding, but I appreciate there may be some animal health requirements on that.
Okay, Noreen, do you want to deal with hay and straw coming into BCP in Dublin?
Yes, so again, just from the bedding point of view, again, we wouldn't have any issue with that. The wood chips from an ISPM 15, and then hay and straw. We have done a risk assessment on this, and we are not going to so hay and straw coming in, sorry, if it's coming in on a load with a horse, in that it's in front of the horse to eat, or the straw is on the ground, we are not going to subject that to checks. If it's coming in as a load, it is subject to import requirements.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a few questions around day-old chicks coming into Ireland and Northern Ireland. I don't know, Ruth, if you want to cover day-old chicks and including maybe some difficulties or potential difficulties that may arise for day-old chicks. We've also been asked about the meat preparations issue. So at the moment, there is no the requirements for imports of meat and meat preparations require that those products coming into the EU are frozen to -18 degrees Celsius. There is no EU import cert for chilled or fresh meat and meat preparations. So currently, as matters stand, those products cannot be imported into the EU after the 1st of January. There are other requirements, similar prohibitions in relation to seed and ware potatoes. People will be aware of those. Again, James, maybe you want to talk about the UK's approach on those matters, and also maybe efforts you're making to be recognised by the EU to allow those products to enter the EU. Thanks.
Thanks, Louise. That's not a question that I can pick up, but I wonder if Jack again may be able to address that. If not, we can take that away and come back with more detail for you.
Hi, sorry, James. Unless anybody else wants to come in, I don't think I can cover that. Really, I think it would be helpful if we could take that one away so we can work it out.
Before we go to the land bridge. Sorry, Ruth, do you want to come in on the day-old chicks?
Sorry, Louise, you're just breaking up there a bit with us. Just discussing the day-old chicks, they will be subject to import requirements coming in. The model certificate will be in Regulation 798/2008, and they'll have to fulfil those requirements to be imported into Ireland from GB from 1st of January.
Okay, that's fine. There's a number of questions around the department's process in relation to the provision of export certification. So just let me maybe just speak for a moment about that. So in terms of the January 1 requirements on the UK side, we have in place arrangements, existing arrangements to provide export certification for high priority plants and plant products, and in relation to the live animals, germinal products, hatching eggs. There are existing systems in place because those goods or those animals and goods are subject to certification for intra-community movements. So those existing procedures will be in place, and obviously people who are moving those goods are familiar with the where to go and find out how to get export certification. We will be moving towards this new system that we have put in place, an export certification system. And actually our plants and plant products are currently using that system for exports to third countries, and that will be the system that will be used obviously then for exports to GB from the 1st of January. As soon as we have clarity in relation to the detail on the export health cert on the import side, it is our on the UK side, it is our intention that we would have a phased transition to that export certification system. Obviously, it is there's a lot of work in that, and that work is ongoing, including in relation to the business processes and the staffing to provide certification. We have had to change our business model to deal with imports from GB, including working 24/7, and all of those business processes will be examined in the context of being able to certify products for export to Great Britain as and when it's needed. There's a number of questions around the Ireland-Northern Ireland border. So just to be clear, goods that are coming into Northern Ireland will be subject to checks at the border control posts on entry to the north, in the same way as the goods are subject to those checks coming in, into border control posts in Ireland. There is no land border, thankfully, on the island, and that's as a result of the protocol on Ireland, Northern Ireland, that was part of the withdrawal agreement agreed between the EU and the UK. It is now 12:15. There are loads of questions that require a lot of time to answer. We are obviously not getting to all of those questions now, so that unless people on my team want to come in now, or on James's team want to come in and pick up on some of those questions that have been asked, because there are numerous questions, and I'll do the 5-second rule. You have 5 seconds to come in.
Louise?
So nobody is coming in.
Louise,
sorry, Ruth, go ahead. Okay, now everybody's trying to come in. So I'm going to go to Ruth, ladies first, and then I'll go to Micheál O'Mahony. I recognised his accent down in Cork. So we'll start with Ruth on our team. Thanks. Oh.
Perfect. Sorry, Louise, I just wanted to provide a bit of clarity around the composite product, because I think there's a lot of questions and a bit of confusion relating to it. So basically, a composite product, what you need to do first is determine, is your product a composite product? And that is one, in simple terms, that contains both processed product of animal origin and plant origin, and that is for human consumption. Now, there's more details. Regulation 2007-275 will give you a lot more details on composite products, and there's a lot of information on the website as well. So if you then decide you have a composite product, you then have to decide, does it require a health cert, and does it require official checks as well? For those, this is where the questions are, derogations and exemptions come in. Article 6 of that regulation discusses the derogation. So that's the circumstances in which your product, which contains both processed animal and plant product, can be derogated from health certification. And they're quite detailed rules, which is why we can't go into each specific product, because you need to see the actual ingredients, the percentage of product of animal origin, and the process flowchart. So it's a really complicated process. But it is up to the operator to go through that process and see, do they think it needs a health cert? And just to clarify that any product that has processed meat in it requires health certification and official checks. Okay, so just to clarify that point. So once you've decided that you don't think your product needs a health cert, then the operator who is responsible for that consignment, that product needs to come in then on a commercial document. Sorry, just to catch up here. Yeah, commercial document, which has to be labelled in the official language of the member state, so that the labelling and the commercial document together give information on the nature, the quantity, number of packages, country, manufacturer and ingredients. However, those products that the operator has said are derogated, they will be subject to risk-based checks at the border control post to ensure they do meet the import requirements. So to make sure they do meet the Article 6 requirements. If we need more information, we will request that a declaration and supporting documentation is provided so that we can determine that what the operator has decided is correct, that those products are derogated from official checks. So as I said, we're happy to provide any more information, to contact us. And if you have you can't work out if your product is derogated, then we are willing to look at that. So send in the product details, percentage of animal product, and the process flow chart, and we can try and help you. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ruth. So Micheál O'Mahony, please, from our Sea Fisheries Protection Agency, come on ahead in.
Thanks, Louise. I count from the questions I've sight of, I count 3 fishy questions, so I'll just bang through the 3 of them, Louise, and see if is there anything else that needs to be done. The first question is, are there different rules for frozen fish versus fresh fish? So this question was posted during a presentation on BCP controls. So I'm assuming it's about freight consignments arriving at BCPs, and the short answer is there is no difference between frozen and fresh fish consignments arriving by a freight consignment to a BCP. They will need a shed, as indicated, a CHED document, a health cert, the pre-notification CAT cert if necessary. It's all the same whether it's frozen or fresh. The only frozen versus fresh connotation to BCPs is the BCP needs to be, you need to make sure that if you're going to with frozen products, the BCP needs to be approved for frozen as well as ambient freight. Then there's a different question, and I'm going to read the question first. I understand that the BCP for frozen seafood will only be in Dublin or Oslo airports. What is the situation with frozen at sea seafood from UK registered trawlers? Do they have to be landed in UK/NI and then presented to BCP in Dublin port? So this question is about a different type of import, which is a direct landing by a fishing vessel of its fishery products. So we're talking about something other than freight consignments now. We're talking about direct landings, and this is allowed for direct landings. In that instances, there are differences between fresh and frozen. Fresh can arrive at a port that is dual designated, both IUU and NIAFC, and the fishy people in the room will understand those acronyms. So in Ireland, there are two ports that are dual designated, Castownbere and Killybegs. Fresh fish can arrive at those with 4 hours notice and a CAT cert without a health cert. Okay, so that's the story for fresh fish direct landings. The question is about frozen fish direct landings, and frozen fish are treated differently for direct landings. They will need to come to a port that not only bears those two designations, but also be approved as a BCP, and there are no such ports in Ireland. So frozen fish direct landings from UK vessels cannot occur to Ireland. If there were such ports, those fish would need to come with 72 hours notice, the CAT certificate and a captain's declaration instead of a health cert. Okay, so I think that answers that question. The question kind of goes on to, do they have to be landed in UK and NI? Yes, they could certainly be landed to UK port, including an NI port. And if you wanted them to bring those frozen fish back into Ireland, you would need to come in through a BCP, Dublin Port or Oslo, or across the land border in Northern Ireland. The third question, final one, Louise, is, I'm going to read the question again. When exporting fresh fish from Donegal to Scotland, sorry, the question, will be allowed to go directly from Donegal to the ports of Belfast or Larne. So this is about moving fish from Ireland to Great Britain through Northern Ireland. So the step from Ireland to Northern Ireland does not require any CAT cert nor health certificate, and the step from Northern Ireland to Great Britain is a matter for the DEFRA colleagues, I guess, rather than for the Irish authorities. So maybe one of those colleagues would step in. Thanks. I'll leave it at that, Louise.
Thank you, Micheál. So James, just on that last question, have you somebody on your team that might be able to answer that? Fish going from Donegal out through Belfast or Larne to Scotland? Thanks.
Right, I was on mute there. I believe we do. I'm just looking down my list. Perhaps before I identify the name, does somebody want to jump in on that?
Yeah, it's Stefan May.
Stefan,
can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so for import, so it would go through and require a catch certificate when entering into Scotland and to be notified, etc. Does that answer the question? Kind of took me that long to get off
Yes,
mute.
thank you thank you very much. That has answered the question. There's one or two that I've been given. How do I find out if a composite food product requires a phytosanitary cert? In this case, the product is a toasted oat product, which is binded together with skim milk powder. No phytosanitary requirements, as this is a processed product. I believe, could you confirm if the certificate of conformance for 10 fruit and vegetables covered by the special marketing standards is required to travel with the load? And could you confirm what inspection checks are carried out on the border? No change, this is in terms of it coming into Ireland, no change.
Louise, sorry, Shane here, if I could just come in on that one. Apologies to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I had sent Sally an update on that, so just to confirm on that yes, the conformity certificate will be required for those 10 fruit and vegetable products, and that can be submitted along with the relevant phytosanitary certificate when submitting the documents for the import. And you're correct in relation to the last question, that is a processed product, so therefore no phytosanitary certificate will be required. I did notice one other question there as well in relation to plants and plant products. Somebody asked, what are the rules on e-commerce for plant and plant products? Will parcels going direct to consumers' home addresses be subject to plant health processes? The answer to that is effectively yes, that if somebody is ordering something online or anything from the UK, any regulated plant or plant product should be accompanied by a valid phytosanitary certificate. And that's all from my side, Louise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I understand Catherine Lawler is going to come in on horses, and then I'm going to cut it and we're going to go to Landbridge, if you don't mind, because time is moving on, and we will answer all of the questions that have been asked and share them. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got quite a number of questions in about export certification out of Ireland. And just to say that we are waiting on the models from the UK. When we have those, we can finalise arrangements. But just one point to highlight to transporters is that the tripartite agreement in its current form will cease on the 31st of December. And from the 1st of January, export certification will be required for all horses moving out of Ireland to GB and all horses entering Ireland. And as part of the preparation for the export certification, we would urge you to contact your private veterinarians now, because they will be required to issue and examine horses and issue supplementary certificates to support the final certificate that we will be issuing. So it's very important you engage now with your private veterinarians to highlight to them that there will be increased certification needed for January. And just one other point, we've some questions have come in about the border control posts and the capacity for horses in mainland Europe. Just to highlight that each border control post has its own controls. So whereas Dublin requires a minimum of 24 hours notice, that might not necessarily be the case for each border control post. So it's also imperative that you engage now with the border control posts in mainland Europe to clarify their controls and their capacity. I know I sat in on a webinar with the British Equestrian recently webinar, and they mentioned one port, which is Coquel, which probably won't affect us except the port tunnel, but I know they've only a capacity of something like 3 horses per hour. So each border control post has to be designated, and it has to be either registered or unregistered equidae or both. So if you have mixed consignments, you will also have to check that. If you go on to government.ie, the Irish government site, there's a very useful site on navigating the land bridge, and it has very useful links to, it's called Using the UK Land Bridge, and it has very useful links to Calais, Rotterdam, Zeebrugge, Dover and Holyhead. So they're actually resources online directly at those border control posts that you can check.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the land bridge. Thanks, Catherine, and thanks, colleagues.